Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from deep inside the heart of the future Liberty State. Sponsored once again by On Fire Ministries in the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news, where it's not about right or left, it's about right and wrong. It's about our hope not being in man, but in Jesus Christ. About not ending in prayer, but moving to action. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Father, deliver us from the evil one.
Welcome to Patriot Radio.
Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and today on Patriot Radio, a momentous day with a peace deal being announced in the Middle East. And not to be outdone, another momentous announcement yesterday. Antifa going to be designated a foreign terrorist organization, including a domestic one. And we are seeing right now with the globalists a huge push towards digital ID and technocracy. But are we seeing the cracks of the global financial system? And will it be replaced? And is that what we're seeing in the gold and silver markets? Also, on the Russia front, Europe continues headlong toward war. Here at Patriot Radio, we want you to have the information before everyone else so that you and your family can be prepared for the times that are ahead and the times that are already upon us. No fear, we were made for this. patriotradio.us/Telegram, you can follow us for real-time intelligence, analysis, and breaking news. Almost 24/7. And if you want to know what's happening ahead of time, we aggregate across a whole bunch of different sources, primary sources particularly. We've been tracking things like the now publicly known planning cycle for terror attacks here in the United States of America. Now, we want you also to know what Antifa is really about and what's coming. The coming color revolution that they want to try to culminate in 2028, but may actually have already bumped up to 2026. And the whole context around that their original plan was to take down the United States in 1976 on the 200th anniversary of the country. And so it makes sense that they would try to do it on the 250th. And they're going to fail. Now, we also are going to talk about today some of Antifa's heretofore little-known posts advocating violence back years ago, and why, as they reduce their online footprint, some people are trying to pretend that those posts really never happened. And we're going to bring those back up so that federal investigators and you, the public, know exactly what Antifa is doing. Not just in Washington state, but also in places like Idaho. And we're going to go through the Antifa auxiliary manual because that should give local law enforcement authorities the ability to track cells and give them what to look for as identifiers at the local level, including your county sheriff. Now, some of this has already been briefed with local elected officials. We're going to talk about what the implications of that may be coming up as well. Now, here at Patriot Radio, we want to pray for you through all of this because this can be a little bit hectic and we seem to be living 10 years in a week. So please, send us a prayer request at patriotradio.us/prayer. We want to walk with you through your journey with Jesus Christ. And that brings us now to your wisdom from the Word. Coming to us from Zephaniah chapter 2, verse 4. For Gaza will be abandoned, and Ashkelon will become a desolation. The inhabitants of Ashdod will be driven out at noon, and Ekron will be uprooted. Seems like we're viewing that real time. What does that mean for all of us? These passages are in the context of the last days. Now, that doesn't and shouldn't bring fear to us. What it should do is it should embolden us right now as Christians to continue preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, healing the sick, casting out demons, raising the dead, and cleansing the lepers until we're called home. The church, though, today has used these things as an excuse not to do anything. In fact, the elections are coming up, and I've heard in the past that churches should not be involved in politics, as I'm sure you've heard that. That is heresy, and I'm going to tell you why, and why that's such a strong statement from me. Because the root behind it and where it came from should give us great discernment. First, the idea behind a church staying out of politics came from the Marxists because it's extremely convenient for them if we stay out of politics and they take control. Number two, the theological underpinning behind that is that somehow Jesus Christ is saying that area of the earth is so dark, he has just written it off. When that clearly contravenes the word, Jesus Christ said that he came to redeem the world. Furthermore, it denies his power because it's saying that somehow Jesus Christ can't change that. It also is denying the idea that we're supposed to do revival and reformation as the church. Reformation, clearly in Matthew 28, making disciples of all nations, teaching them how to obey his commands. And lastly, here in the United States of America, not only is this a biblical command, but it also is a command of citizenship. And the genius of the founding fathers was that the temple of the Holy Spirit is the body of the believer, presupposing a couple of things. One, we are believers, and two, we're showing up so the Holy Spirit can work through us. So when the founding fathers said that we, the people, are the government of the United States, that was their understanding. 9 of the 13 constitutions in the original colonies, when we became a union, required a statement of Christian faith. All but one were Protestant. Maryland was Catholic. And the other statements in the other states that didn't require a specific statement of faith still required a specific statement recognizing a higher power. So when you hear this, that the church is not supposed to be involved in politics, you're siding with the Marxists because they want you not to be involved in politics. And you're also siding with Satan because he has always strove make the church silent. The largest voting bloc in the United States of America is Christians. Largest voting bloc not registered to vote is Christians. And the largest voting bloc in America that is registered to vote but that does not vote is Christians. If we stand up and vote as Christians for what the Bible calls truth, what the Bible shows us are the right values, what the Bible says is good, the United States of America will turn around in an instant. And I suspect it will carry over to Europe as well. So, fellow Christian brothers and sisters, which way do we go in this time? Do we go toward the kingdom or toward our own spot of comfort inside the four walls of the church that never really has an impact on anything? The Jesus People movement was a fantastic revival. But at the same time, the enemy took over the institutions and we came a quarter of an inch from losing the country. We have to have revival and reformation. And I hope that you are going to join those that are waking up in the United States right now. All of us. See this country passed on in freedom and liberty to the next generation. That brings us now to your daily intelligence briefing, coming to us from the Globalist Front.
The future is built by us. We have the means to make progress on the global agenda.
Technocrats are now, well, they have been for a while actually, but in earnest, targeting farms and ranches. Turning Genesis on its head, technocrats are destroying work with AI. Technocrats are killing fertility and trying to promise artificial wombs. Technocrats are taking away land from us so we can't work it anymore and we can stay in our little 300 square foot apartment in the city. And technocrats are trying to replace food sources with engineered food. Go to your local supermarket and check out the cracker section. Seems like it would be pretty harmless, but see how many crackers actually have bioengineered foods in them. And ask yourself a question, what is that? What does that mean for my body? Now, this global war on food continues. And this idea that we can manufacture something better than God is just more of the age-old hubris of humanity. It's time for us to say no and return to our local farms and ranches, local sourcing, and growing our own vegetable gardens and fruit trees. What a wonderful thing that would be if we all did it. Elon Musk gambles on sexy AI companions. Seems like he's actually going after the incel movement, trying to get them from being violent or something by providing these digital companions. So what it's really happening is it's turning it into a drug, at least a digital drug. We're going to have to be addressing this in our churches very soon as well, because this addictive AI video and caricature creating, and especially the bots that are doing this, is what people are spending their time on instead of face-to-face interaction. So take a moment with your family at night, turn off the cell phone, pray together. In fact, play games together. Go for a walk outside. Prioritize sunlight. See how that doesn't change your life. Also, the Sandbox Act gives teeth to the AI action plan. The Trojan horse of the Sandbox Act refers to a computer industry setup where a defined space is created for anything goes experimentation. Arizona State University set up sandboxes in Maricopa County using high-speed 5G to let startups develop and test their wares on unsuspecting citizens. Quote, I have personally seen the power of these sandboxes to be able to allow great American minds and innovators to actually put their tools to the test in real-life situations, end quote. Now, what's interesting about this is the attempt to allow AI in small spaces to be completely unhinged. Doesn't necessarily have any sideboards or protections on it. People are asking the question, do we need to have that conversation? And obviously the answer is yes. But more importantly, I even think than that, AI is coming toward a bubble. And the Bank of England and the IMF fear the market correction as the AI bubble talk intensifies. Quote, buckle up, uncertainty is the new normal and it is here to stay, end quote, says the IMF managing director. Well, I've heard this as well, and I want everybody to pay attention to this. Bookmark the episode. There is an AI bubble, and it's sometime it's going to pop. Some of you don't remember 2008 when the tech bubble did. But all the signs are there right now that this is in the near term, not in the long term. So beware of AI and any investments in it. Just like in 2008, is the bubble being used actually to transfer a bunch of wealth? Again, we're here to just bring you the news on this stuff, but it's clearly concerning, and not many people have been talking about it until Epoch Times started to cover it here recently. Now, many of the big investors, they probably already know about it. But do you, as Americans, fellow patriots, know about this? Christians who want to see your hard-earned money stewarded well in these times? Probably not. Take a look at it, read about it for yourself. And this is why I also think gold is saying that the fiat currency experiment is ending globally. Now, Rubino has brought this up. If you watch the financial press, they are noting that the price of gold is going up, but they are treating it like any other asset. What we're seeing all around the world are fiat currencies declining in value dramatically, especially against gold. Basically, gold is saying that fiat currency experiment is ending. Almost every nation is facing the same crisis and the same currency outcome. This basically will lead to a currency death spiral. That's where we are at right now. What will replace the Federal Reserve or currency? It'll be a digital currency, probably backed by commodities. That's where things are headed right now. Interestingly enough, the Weimar Republic, huge inflationary spiral in Germany prior to a world war, and in the wake of a world war, the way they got out of that spiral was through backing currency by real estate. They got out of that spiral by backing currency with a tangible asset. I suspect that real estate, gold, and silver are exactly that in this next round and this next phase out that we're going to see, this next currency transition is probably what's going to lead to some kind of fiscal crisis or economic crisis around the world. The price of silver hit a 3-decade high, over $50 an ounce. Gold is over $4,000. And I remember when everybody said that's not going to happen. And lastly, on the globalist front, Blackwater founder launches private army to defend Christians in Nigeria. Eric Prince says he's building a private military company to protect Nigerian Christians from ISIS-linked militants and wants the Vatican to fund it. Prince directly called out Pope Leo XIV, quote, "Why not help my brothers protect Nigerian Christians from the Muslims who are massacring them," end quote. Over 7,000 Christians have reportedly been killed in Nigeria this year alone. Some are claiming that the numbers are much higher than that, especially in the last 3 months. Interesting that it's always Christians that are being targeted for genocide, actual genocide. The world remains eerily quiet. When we come back from the break, more from the China front and Middle East peace. Now, right in front of us, we may actually see a deal signed before we cease recording this radio show.
What if I told you could convert your 401k or your IRA into gold? While your retirement is being beat up by a volatile stock market and inflation, it could instead be resting safely in physical gold at a place of your own choosing, including your own business. Look, gold has increased 50% in just the last year. Stock market, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. So protect your retirement from market chaos by calling Verity Metals today.
And now the China front. Secretary Burgum says that the U.S. is taking extraordinary steps to foil CCP market manipulation. The Interior Secretary said the Trump administration trade talks are exposing China's vulnerability as the most energy-dependent country in the world. That is clearly a shot across the bow of Chinese dependence on oil from places like Iran. Key industries in the West were within weeks of shuttering down in the spring after the Chinese Communist Party levied export restrictions on 7 heavy rare earth minerals needed to manufacture magnets for everything from automobiles to fighter jets. We were going tit for tat. Now, interesting, they withheld shipping a certain type of magnet to all Western countries, not just the United States. We are facing within weeks every auto plant in the world being shut down. The Trump administration exempted electronics from boosted tariffs, and the CCP lifted the restrictions. According to the U.S. Geological Survey's 2024 mineral commodity summaries, the U.S. has 100% import reliance for 12 of the 50 most critical minerals and more than 50% import reliance for an additional 29. The CCP's import restrictions are a wake-up call for everybody in the West. We've got to secure our supply chains. That is why Trump signed an executive order regarding the road, 211-mile road in Alaska to some of these rare earth deposits. The United States used to be the largest exporter and manufacturer and processor of rare earth minerals. We can be again, but we have to get this ridiculous environmental lobby out of the way so that our national security will follow. So, President Trump understands that as part of the national energy emergency, we're using every authority we have to bring those supply chains back home. That includes getting us back into the mining game, but also we've got to have the refining capability for those minerals. Now, China widens its rare earth export controls before the Trump-Xi meeting. Epoch Times says likely meeting, although it looks like it actually may not happen. 5 more rare earth elements, lithium batteries, and artificial diamonds were also added to Beijing's export control list. The Chinese Communist regime has done this. It was on October 9th, but specifically barring defense and semiconductor companies outside China from accessing those critical minerals. So, following on the heels of that, 6 related announcements, according to Bill Bishop, that also affect this. Today's actions go way beyond semiconductors. If your company needs drill bits for oil and gas drilling, you'll need a PRC license. That's a Chinese communist license. PRC just showed that it can control the supply chains by new quality productive forces globally. Now, this means that China has just weaponized the entire rare earth supply chain. Those are the kind of things that could drive the United States to collapse China's economy and create quite a hardship there and may even lead to war. We're going to be monitoring this very well, very closely. This does not bode well for U.S.-Chinese relations in the future. There's going to be some tough negotiations. A U.S. lawmaker proposed airline sanctions to pressure Beijing on rare earth minerals, and President Trump has been urged to take action against this weaponization, which is affecting specifically the U.S. defense industry. China continues to choke exports of rare earths and magnets to the United States and its allies, particularly for defense and advanced manufacturing. So the Chinese regime continues to weaponize critical supply chains. This is a deliberate squeeze that mirrors their coercive actions in the past as part of the Chinese Communist Party's playbook. So we're going to see, again, more on this in the near future. And I suspect there's going to be more activity in the Pacific, even though there's been a shift to the Western Hemisphere. There's going to be more activity in the Pacific just to make sure the United States prevents China from going to war with Taiwan. Taiwan has declared its readiness to halt purchases of Russian petrochemical feedstock, the second largest buyer of Russian naphtha, used in petrochemical production after India. State-owned companies stopped importing Russian energy resources back in 2023, but private firms continue to do so. And now they are looking at ceasing it. So this is not just about China, but it's about breaking the dependence, Europe and Taiwan, with Russian oil. Also, 20 years ago, the United States was one of the largest importers of natural gas. Now it is the largest exporter. This is possible for the United States to again be the largest exporter of rare earth minerals. It's just a matter of political will. And what that'll do for the United States is a massive economic boom. If we open up our minds and drill, baby, drill. State Department has fired a U.S. diplomat over a relationship with a woman accused of ties to the CCP. This relationship was secret and involved dating. And this is part of the recent crackdown. Finally, some counterintelligence things happening that are severing obvious points of exploitation into the United States government. Secretary Rubio, as he fired this person, caught for hiding a secret CCP relationship, he gave this Foreign Service Officer Daniel Choi the boot after he admitted on hidden camera to secretly dating the daughter of a top Chinese Communist Party official. So I suspect there will be more hidden camera type things from James O'Keefe in this regard to root out, or at least help root out, some of these Chinese communist spies inside the United States. I wonder if there'll be other countries that will be implicated as well. Also, Thailand's cyber police raided a Bangkok apartment rented to a 36-year-old Chinese individual on October 6th and seized illegal communications equipment, including devices that emit fake mobile signals. 50 mini computers in the operation equipped with mobile phone SIM cards suspected of being used to illegally set up cellular signal networks and communication systems, potentially intercepting network data or fabricating servers and routers to evade detection. Interesting that this is very similar to what happened in New York and New Jersey recently, where it really looked like they were setting up to take down the cell towers on a significant part of the East Coast. Scale and speed. Why Chinese drones are the center of potential war with the United States of America. And here is the main reason. Very cheap, very easy to fly, and very destructive. And it's not just aerial drones. Everybody's focusing on those, but sea drones. And the United States has shifted massively towards sea drones to be another bulwark against the Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Drone warfare is now here to stay, and that's why there is a huge race for counter-drone technology. And we're going to see more of that happen, not just in the Middle East with Israel's Iron Beam, but we'll see some technology being revealed by the United States as well to counter drones in the Pacific. Dissent appears to be growing as anti-CCP slogans have surfaced ahead of a key party meeting. I talked about this fourth plenum coming up very quickly. The voices of dissent are rising across China ahead of this major meeting, and citizens are calling for freedom and democracy with slogans like the CCP isn't China, the CCP is an evil cult. Beijing is reacting furiously to Taiwanese President Li Chang-tai's recent plea to Donald Trump. Meanwhile, the Pentagon is also considering a senior official for Indo-Pacific affairs, someone who supports Taiwan spending 10% of its GDP on defense. So, yes, there is some instability there. And it's in times of instability that war can happen at a moment's notice. From a friend in Korea, Gordon Chang talks about the arrest of the former Minister of Justice, Park Sung-jae. I'm writing to share a deeply concerning development in South Korea that illustrates an accelerating erosion of the rule of law and a systematic targeting of former officials from the previous administration. So, South Korea's leadership right now is doing what the Biden administration did. And I suspect there's going to be huge blowback there. But the more important question for all of us is, do we have an ally that's actually gravitating toward China? What does that mean for our servicemen and women stationed there? Indonesia, and this went really underreported. Indonesia found traces of radioactivity in 22 facilities at an industrial zone near the capital. Nothing else after that? Here's the implication. Was somebody smuggling a radioactive device through Indonesia to another country like Philippines, maybe even a port in the United States? When we come back from the break, peace in Gaza.
What if I told you could convert your 401k or your IRA into gold? While your retirement is being beat up by a volatile stock market and inflation, it could instead be resting safely in physical gold at a place of your own choosing, including your own business. Look, gold has increased 50% in just the last year. Stock market, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. So protect your retirement from market chaos by calling Verity Metals today.
And we're back with the Middle East front. U.S. President Donald Trump will arrive in Israel on Sunday and will address the Knesset following the signing of the peace deal. And it does look like this one is going to hold, at least for the near term. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke with Trump by phone, congratulating him, and Trump congratulating Netanyahu on the ceasefire, with Prime Minister Netanyahu thanking Trump for all of his efforts in global leadership, while President Trump congratulated Netanyahu on his determined leadership and actions in Israel. Additionally, during the call, Netanyahu invited him to Israel to speak before the Knesset. The immediate thing is, on Monday or Tuesday, 20 Israeli hostages are expected to be released and returned home. And here is the list of those hostages. Now, these are the live hostages, and this apparently has been confirmed as part of the negotiation that they are still alive. The families there, I'm sure, overjoyed. This is an incredible development for them. Now, in addition to that, the ceasefire is set to take effect within 24 hours of its ratification by the Israeli government, and that is expected to happen anytime, followed by a release of the hostages in Gaza within 72 hours. So again, it could be Monday or Tuesday, but it definitely is happening over this weekend. Hamas will be disarmed, and Israel will withdraw after the hostage handover. This was according to President Trump. He announced that the implementation plan includes the disarmament of Hamas, followed by a gradual Israeli withdrawal from parts of the Gaza Strip once the hostages are in fact handed over. I've shown the map before. It seems like it's a very similar map to what's been discussed in the past. But there will be an initial withdrawal, then a secondary withdrawal, and then a third withdrawal in stages. One of the Hamas top leaders, Khalil al-Hayya, has announced that the ceasefire will be permanent. Notice how he looks very well fed. It remains to be seen whether Hamas will disarm. Yeah, it does remain to be seen, but those kind of statements, he's putting his credibility on the line, at least in the near term. Now, interesting enough, some of the people celebrating this on the Islamic side started saying, may this be like the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Now, for us in the West, we have no idea what that is, but it was a treaty that Muhammad did. It was a treaty only for a certain amount of time for the purpose of Muhammad getting stronger until he could conquer his enemies. So the fact that those things are being said right now by people on the streets means I don't know if this peace is going to last in the long term. President Trump says gas prices will drop below $2 in the pretty near future. Sounds like that might have been part of the deal on the sidelines. That's what the United States gets out of it, well, as well as you and me. Also, very interesting breaking news report coming from Eagle Eye, reposted by Sarah Adams. An aerial strike in Kabul targeted a high-value individual in a vehicle. As soon as I figure out who that is, we have some confirmation on the ground, but it does look like maybe an al-Qaeda leader was struck in Kabul, Afghanistan. The U.S. has slapped sanctions on dozens over links to Iran oil exports, and this is part of the crackdown also against China. The U.S. Treasury is degrading Iran's cash flow by dismantling key elements of Iran's energy export machine. Under POTUS, this administration is disrupting the regime's ability to fund terrorist groups that threaten the United States, according to the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Quite literally, it's moving hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Iranian liquefied natural gas. That's what's happening in this export scheme, and they're cutting into that right now. Expect that there will be some pushback from Iran. Oh, wait, there was. New Iranian officials have threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz, likely to try to discourage the United States from enforcing sanctions that target Iranian oil exports. Closing the Strait of Hormuz would result in a war. And that brings us now to the Russia front. The CJSC soldering plant in Novosibirsk caught fire today, produces electronics for the Russian army. This is after a series of what appear to be partisan attacks inside Russia against key manufacturing infrastructure. In addition, the Ukrainians have absolutely hammered Crimea, torching Crimea's largest oil terminal in Theodosia, the smoke plume stretches 25 kilometers. So there is a continued attack by the Ukrainians degrading Russian manufacturing, and Russia has now accused Ukraine of blowing up an ammonia pipeline as well. You can see here. And this is just the continued strategy for Ukraine to take out logistics. If we could bring that ammonia pipeline up real quick. To take out logistics for Russia and degrade them to the point they finally come to the table for peace. So we're going to see this continue over the near and probably the medium term until something really signals to Russia they cannot continue their war in Ukraine. And maybe Russia says enough is enough, and they're not going to let that happen, and they decide to do something against NATO. The European Parliament has adopted a resolution calling on EU member states to shoot down Russian aircraft violating their airspace. The resolution also condemns Russian drone attacks on infrastructure across Europe. In addition to that, an RC-135W Rivet Joint Signal Intelligence aircraft with the British Royal Air Force has been tracing the border with Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine today from the Arctic all the way towards the Black Sea. These are indicators that are not good. Something is very, very tense right there. And Russia may be planning for continued drone incursions into Europe. And at some point, maybe even another air incursion. Thales, Belgium reported a surge in drone flights over secret sites. One of Europe's largest air defense companies has reported an increase in drone activity over its classified facilities. The company fears drones could cause damage or injure people if they crash. Incidents have risen at Thales as Thales doubles production to 70,000 units per year of its missiles. So no wonder there is surveillance happening over their facilities. Federal government of Germany has also approved an amendment to the Federal Police Act, which would expand the powers of the federal police, allowing them to intercept drones that are deemed to be a threat to critical sites using technical measures that include electromagnetic pulses, jamming, GPS interference, as well as physical measures such as the shoot down of drones. So again, this is continuing to ramp up there in Eastern Europe. Russia's parliament approved the withdrawal from the Plutonium Management and Disposition Agreement with the United States, a Cold War-era pact to reduce weapons-grade plutonium stockpiles. The move raises serious concerns over global nuclear security and strategic stability, and I expect this is going to continue where Russia withdraws from critical treaties as a signal they are not going to go along with the sanctions from the West. Transnistria, for those of you who don't know it, it's a proxy state of Russia between Moldova and Ukraine. But it looks like that area's days are numbered because it's about to run out of natural gas and collapse economically. Payments intended to cover natural gas costs for Transnistria are being rejected by European banks. The funds were reportedly routed through alleged money laundering companies in the UAE, representing a financial lifeline for the Russian-backed regime in the region. So we're going to see more of Transnistria in the news in the coming months as that comes to a head. Poland is going to refuse to take in the EU's mandatory quota of immigrants once the EU's migration pact comes into force in 2026. The message was delivered by Poland's new conservative president, and I'm sure the European Union is not super happy about that. And here is why, though, this is the right thing to do and why many Eastern European countries are saying enough regarding illegal immigration. In Austria, an Afghan migrant caregiver has been arrested for raping an 82-year-old woman. Her son witnessed it live through cameras installed in the house. In the Austrian capital, Vienna, an 82-year-old woman suffering from dementia was brutally raped by her caregiver, who turned out to be an Afghan migrant named Saraf. The lawyer for the victim's family said that after the incident, the elderly woman no longer wants to live and has repeatedly stated that she wants to commit suicide. This is one example of thousands of rapes happening across Europe. And we're not just talking in a year's time. This is happening in months' time. And it's been swept under the rug. Some are recognizing it, like Italy's leader, who has introduced a new bill to combat Islamist and cultural separatism. Full burqa and niqab ban in all public places. All mosque funding must be disclosed. The reason she would do that is because part of the giving to a mosque must go toward jihad. Most people don't know that. It's called zakat. Interesting to see if the United States will follow suit regarding some of this. We'll get to that here in just a little bit. And lastly, France's Marine Le Pen vows to block any government and urges polls, which means a snap election in France. Could be the closest that France gets in Marine Le Pen's lifetime anyway to a conservative government that could bring it back from the brink. We'll come back from the break. The National Front and Antifa finally being held to account.
What if I told you could convert your 401k or your IRA into gold? While your retirement is being beat up by a volatile stock market and inflation, it could instead be resting safely in physical gold at a place of your own choosing, including your own business. Look, gold has increased 50% in just the last year. Stock market, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. So protect your retirement from market chaos by calling Verity Metals today.
And we're back with the National Front. Homeland Security arrests at the southern border hit 55-year low. Bravo to the Trump administration. General Flynn calls out the coming color revolution. And remember, we talked about here on Patriot Radio, we need to figure out what the color is, begin mocking it, and then also owning it to undercut what they're trying to do. Well, it looks like Antifa, the rest of these affinity groups, while they typically dress in black bloc, are choosing the color purple for this coming revolution. Interestingly enough, the attempt to choose purple should play right into Christians, because purple is actually the color of royalty, and we own that color as sons and daughters of the living God. Another liberal was arrested over assassination messages to a GOP rep. The lawmaker's kids were threatened as well. Very interesting. In Loudoun County, Virginia, we have yet another crazed progressive loony who was allegedly sending a Virginia GOP state lawmaker a death threat for complaining about a racist sign aimed at Republican gubernatorial candidate Winsome Earl Sears. And there is Patrick Murphy's booking photo. We'll see how that comes out and what any network links there are. Nearly 300 Department of War employees were investigated so far over response to Charlie Kirk's death. For the Washington Post, online comments disparaging the conservative commentator from service members, contractors, and civilian employees have been investigated. The Washington Post said the investigations resulted in a smattering of disciplinary actions so far. That probably is going to ramp up soon. Now, yesterday at the White House, a historic thing occurred. Journalists who have been actually covering on the ground what Antifa has been doing in the Pacific Northwest, and particularly in Portland, were summoned to the White House. Here is what President Trump said. These are agitators, anarchists, and they are paid. You will be finding out very soon. You should see what we have on these people. These are bad people, people that want to destroy our country, and we won't let that happen. End quote. Now I'm going to say something. In the legislature, I introduced a resolution specifically to condemn Antifa and other domestic terror affinity groups. And I specifically called to account people from both sides of the aisle on the threat to the United States of America. Now, with that information, some people did nothing. Some people did worse. They actually aided and abetted these networks. And there are people, politicians, who are connected to Antifa. We're about to have their world shaken Because if you're connected to not just a domestic terror organization, but a foreign terror organization, well, that implicates a whole host of potential avenues for criminal charges. So, Antifa was born in Europe, still resides there, still has links to groups in the Middle East, and meets every requirement for designation as an FTO. Trump asked Jack Posobiec if he'd like Antifa named a foreign terror organization. Yes, Mr. President, they have foreign links all across Western Europe. Now, I've had people try to argue this, and liberal reporters. We're going to bring up a picture right now of the 1933 Antifa symbol and the current symbol that Antifa uses. And as you can clearly see here with this graphic, Antifa had the same symbol in 1933 as it does today. So this idea that somehow it's just a decentralized idea is absolutely false. They have symbols, they have command centers, they have links, they have funding, and President Trump is getting clearly to the bottom of it. In addition to that, Ireland brought forward Antifa's links to Sinn Féin. In fact, Sinn Féin used to sell Antifa merch on their website, according to Michael O'Keefe, and they're calling for more investigations there as well. White House has also released, as part of this roundtable, the names funding Antifa, protests, and violence in the United States of America. Quote, "We paid for our own protests with over 100 million laundered by Democrats through NGOs. Like taxpayer funding is what was said yesterday. George Soros, the Open Society Network, Arabella Funding Network, the Tides Fishing Network, Neville Roy Singham and his network, Johann George Hans-Georg Weiss, a billionaire donor in Sweden, and additional foreign cash. Quote, it's also big left-wing funders, some of whom are not citizens of this country. Quote, we have identified dozens of radical organizations, not just the decentralized Antifa organizations, but dozens of radical organizations that have received more than $100 million from the Riot Incorporation investors, end quote. Quote, I think what's most shocking is that we found that more than 100 million U.S. taxpayer funding has flowed into these funding networks, end quote. So President Trump then had FBI Director Kash Patel talk about and confirm that they are actively following the money with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent behind Antifa and left-wing militant groups. We're following the money. Money never lies. And that's what it's going to take to bring down this network of organized criminal thugs, gangbangers, and yes, domestic terrorists, because that's what they are, end quote. Quote, they will not be able to hide. They were able to hide and conspire with prior administrations. That's a very heavy statement right there. And we are exposing their corruption from within. And we will go to every single city in this country, end quote. Again, the links to politicians, I think, are going to shock Americans. AG Pam Bondi says the United States will now do the same thing to Antifa, what it did to the cartels. We're going to take the same approach with Antifa, destroy the entire organization from top to bottom. We're going to take them apart. And I wonder if this is going to apply also to some of the affinity organizations, like John Brown Gun Club, Socialist Rifle Association, Redneck Revolt. Remains to be seen if they'll be added to this list. Mark Bray, the international Antifa financier and Rutgers University assistant professor who fled to Spain recently, is trying to spread a lie that he was nearly prevented from leaving the United States. Framed an airline error as government intervention. I'm actually surprised he was allowed to leave the United States based on what's already been said and some of his connections. It'll be interesting to see if Trump administration asks Spain to cooperate here, because Spain has not been very cooperative with President Trump. Also, the Italian member of the European Parliament, Maria Salas, got to celebrate after the European Parliament voted 206 to 205 to maintain her immunity, blocking her extradition to Hungary, face trial for allegedly being part of the Antifa hammer gang, which smashed the heads of political opponents with hammers. Interestingly enough, one of the people's vote buttons didn't work suddenly at the end. They did not allow a revote. That man you saw standing up, I believe, was calling for that revote. Also, legal battles over National Guard deployments to 5 states. You can see what's going to happen here. Texas and blue states are going to lead the way, and Texas and red states are going to lead the way into bringing National Guard troops into blue states if the blue states are not cooperative. So I suspect this is going to go to the United States Supreme Court. Right now, it's at the Ninth Circuit over the deployment to Oregon. And last time, the Ninth Circuit actually ruled in favor of President Trump. President Trump also signed the Columbus Day Proclamation saying, "We're back, Italians." Gotta love Columbus Day. Senator Tommy Tuberville is pushing a ban on Sharia law nationwide, calling out the genocide of Christians by Muslims. Quote, "This extreme ideology is straight from the pit of hell and it has no place in American society. You won't hear from Democrats about how radical Islamic terrorists are currently carrying out a mass genocide of Christians in Nigeria. More than 62,000 Christians have been slaughtered since 2000 by radical Islamic terrorists in Nigeria." You heard that right, 62,000. So there's a push at the national level now to ban Sharia law. And there's also a push at the state level. Governor DeSantis posted this: "Sharia law has no place in the USA and it's incompatible with the Constitution. The Florida legislature is now considering a law to ban Sharia law from being enforced in the state. It should be passed nationwide." The Texas GOP is also weighing in at the state level, officially passing a resolution calling on President Trump to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization. Meanwhile, a Democrat candidate for California governor, Katie Porter, called pedophilia an identity. And that video is going viral right now. This just after a botched interview with CBS. Going to see more of this, I think, coming in the next couple of weeks. Also, in a very good news story today, Governor DeSantis just dropped a bombshell. He means to abolish the property tax system. Amen. You know, originally in state constitutions, this was prohibited. Washington state constitution was one of those. It was prohibited. And yet, the original Washington state constitution said that title would be an allodium. In other words, you could not lose your property to failure to pay taxes. You had to sign a document. You had to do something affirmative to allow your property to then have a lien on it. I wonder if we'll get back to that. It could be the largest transfer of wealth if property was returned to the people in the history of the world. And it would be biblical as well, along with the 50th year and the idea of a Jubilee year. Within the next year or two, probably sooner, according to Matt Walsh, anyone who hates you will be able to generate any kind of defamatory video of you doing or saying something awful. And it will be so indistinguishable from a real video that you simply won't ever be able to prove that it's fake. Literally nothing is being done to prevent this from happening, but we're calling attention to it right now. And just a couple of things, last but not least. I'm going to bring forward some things now that I've been holding on to for a long time. And we're going to continue to do this over the next few weeks. But I want to show you a few posts. First of all, Antifa has an auxiliary manual, a Rust. That's what they call it. And this manual very clearly lays out for this remote uprising support team the different positions that are available in it. Now, this should be a roadmap for the Trump administration and anyone who is really seeking to take this network down and expose it. How they operate. Social media teams, exploitation teams, narrative exploitation teams, OPSEC teams. I mean, it is very, very well organized for just an idea, right? So I hope that this gets to the right folks and also gets to the right folks at the state and the county level, because county sheriffs could be doing a lot especially here in the Pacific Northwest, to prosecute Antifa militants and their supporters through these types of remote uprising support teams at the local level. It doesn't all need to be the federal government. Now, in addition to that, the violent rhetoric from Antifa took many different forms. And we would see posts that would be up for a year. Now, this is back when Twitter was Twitter and wasn't X yet. But here's an example of some of these posts. So coming out of North Idaho, punch a Nazi. Remember, kids, there's no genders, and my fists don't know gender. It's not domestic violence if she voted for Trump. You have a Hispanic lady with a black eye. That's right. These new memes coming out are top notch. Now, you can see the year 2017. But when these were brought up to media sources here locally, posted online, briefed to local law enforcement, and briefed to elected officials in both North Idaho and in Eastern Washington, very little was really done about it. In fact, they didn't really take it seriously. And these type of violent posts now that Antifa has been designated a domestic terror organization and Trump is about to designate it a foreign terror organization should be brought forward as more and more evidence, because some of these posts have actually been scrubbed. Last but not least, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the connection with reporters. PJ Media did a story on the connection between certain Huffington Post reporters like Jason Wilson and Antifa. And I hope the Trump administration takes note of that as well. That's the briefing. This is Matt Shea. Thank you once again for joining me here on Patriot Radio. May God bless all of you. He is making this generation the greatest one. It's all of us it's going to take to keep up the fight.